Hello?
Brainy Blonde, it's Jason and George. We're closing in on a lot of this stuff. You know, we were over at the auto train in Sanford the other day, and Joe's been doing a lot of research into the shipping of cars and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
George was telling me, and you sent over some texts and everything, you got a lot of information on the Alpha Jalo car ring and all that stuff.
Well, the Alpha dude is like another story. I mean, I was telling George that when you look at the people who have been arrested in New York and New Jersey, you can follow the cases. Like, you can look up court documents, you can look up the sentencing, you can look up in like inmates. Most of them, you can see when they were sentenced, how like what they were put in jail for, how long. The only one that you can never find information on is Alpha Jola.
Jalo.
And however you want to pronounce his name. Alpha J.
Okay.
Alpha J.
Alpha, the Alpha dog. Yes,
Which
so
is just strange.
no info. It is strange. What's up with this guy?
Well, what's even more strange to me is this isn't new. So, and we can go into, I know George had just tweeted out an article about the links to terrorism,
Right.
but all of these car shipping and stealing, and they're all linked to terrorism. It's how they fund stuff. I mean, if you go through the article George tweeted out, this guy, Bill Warner, who's this investigator, has been following this stuff for years.
Right.
And it's all about Florida and the ports in Florida,
Right.
in New York, in New Jersey, I mean, all over.
They said the
But
cars
he
are
actually
the cash, is what they said. It's like a whole industry.
Well, yeah, and he cites cases. I mean, this isn't like a theory. I mean,
Right.
this is. I mean, even Muhammad Atta was a car salesman. So I mean, he links everything to like specific attacks that have occurred where the cars that were being used, or the money that was made off of these transactions, is being used to fund terrorism.
Right.
I think in 2004, there was a case of a guy in Houston who was a plumber. And on an ISIS video, his truck was in the ISIS video, and it had like his logo on it. And he was like, what the hell? How did my truck end up in the hands of ISIS?
Yeah.
I mean, they all drive those Toyotas. I mean, this is not something that our government does not know about. They've jailed a lot of people. They've arrested people, but it seems that they're all behind these terror links. And this Bill Warner, if people start looking into some of the names and the international car theft rings that this Bill Warner guy has been following for a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to see it's not just these newer cars, but these guys have these used car dealerships and they do these auctions, and it helps fund terrorism.
Right.
And then he actually maps out whether it's coming from the United States or Canada. He maps out the actual route that these cars take and where they're going, whether it be, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Jordan, all these places. He maps out the westward, eastward tracking. And he does a lot of information on why Florida is so important. But what's interesting is, I know like in Tampa, they said that the port that is there, that's where a lot of stuff occurs. But because CENTCOM is right there,
Yeah.
that sometimes like they won't use that port because it goes through like an extra X-ray process. But then he goes on to say that Tampa, Florida is like basically the main hub
Wow.
of like the there, which is odd to me that if CENTCOM and like all of those bases are right there, how is this still to this day continuing to go on? And
Well,
I say
this
that
article
not
that you
just for
sent me
Florida.
says that the FBI has known about it for years.
Years and years, and but they also link them to these car dealerships. The one there's an interesting one down in Sarasota that was in an article George tweeted out that these people in Florida, FBI or whatever, actually sued for 9/11 information.
Yeah.
But not only that, there's cases in Ohio where 3 guys were arrested for plotting a terrorist attack that were using used car dealerships. There was one guy that was arrested that was from Gaithersburg, Virginia, that tried to flee through Dulles Airport. I mean, does that ring a bell? But there he does a very good job of tracking like every single case, and not just in the United States, but stuff that comes through Canada, and stuff that's being done vice versa. So I think you guys touched upon it yesterday, but it's not just cars that are leaving the United States, but it's also ones that are coming back into the United States. So there's both routes. But he does a very good job of kind of going through like used car dealerships, or they place people at the port. They place people at the warehouses where they store the cars. They actually have dealership guys that just like work in a dealership that are using locksmiths to basically get keys made.
Yeah, well, not only keys, but the electronic fobs, the wireless fobs,
right?
For these high-end vehicles.
And then like the VIN numbers. But it's just interesting to see that the FBI has known about this. They do a very good job of covering this stuff up, which is kind of scary. But, you know, when you start to see the links between who's been getting arrested and where they're from, where the cars are going, sometimes they get the cars back, sometimes they don't. But what he's also saying is, and he does a very good job, is it's not just the cars, because the cars are being used in like suicide bomb attacks, but it's what they're shipping in the cars. So there's one news story that he's doing where, I mean, he even talks about like how Osama bin Laden was they call them these black cars, where they're cloning car VIN numbers. And then like in compartments inside of the cars, they're sending stuff back and forth as well. So,
well, you know, Joe had identified this vehicle, or sorry, I don't know if it was Joe, it was another crowdsourced community member identified a vehicle that traveled from UAE to, I think, Karachi, and had increased in weight.
Well, that's the banking. But the Karachi's, it's important when you read through all of these cases. I mean, I literally spent all morning, it's case after case after case.
No, I don't think people realize it's an industry. It's incredibly sophisticated.
Yes. But it also has to do with the banking, because it's how they're doing the funding. So, and it links to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and there's also these communities in Florida and Maryland that, and they're basically all over the United States.
Well,
but
and of course, we've had that other story about how UAE controls the port of Tampa, or Port Canaveral over there. And right, was that the port, George? Port Canaveral controlled by UAE?
Yes.
And of course, Saudi Arabia is heavily involved in UAE. So there's something going on.
But that's why it's scary that we're just giving control to these people that come into the United States. And, you know, yes, of course, like they have money and stuff, but it's who they hire or who are running these operations. But if you control the port, or even if you place guys in the port, I don't even care if you're a trash guy at the port. Like, it's basically how they're able to do this stuff. They know, like, when stuff comes in, when stuff goes out, who's watching what. They make all of the bill, like the bill of lading stuff, and the VIN numbers and the registration.
Well, and what's searched, what's not searched. You know, Joe's got a report this morning about a warning that was received for a vehicle that it's on its way to Karachi that has an IED in the vehicle.
Well, that's what this guy is saying. He says is that they're putting stuff in the compartments.
Right.
And not only that, drugs, money, weapons. There's stuff, he lists stuff that's been going back and forth to Syria, to Iraq,
well, weeks ago, Mr. Hudson had identified that cars are specifically a way that they're transporting illicit material, because then when it gets there, particularly older cars, there was a 2002 Lexus that was transported in 2015 or something like that by the Awan Brothers Shipping Company, and it was very curious why such an old car would be sent such a long distance in a shipping container.
That's what I think people are. It's not just these luxury cars, although they are a part of it, but it's these used car dealerships. They go to auctions. So, like, there's even pictures of these, Muslim-linked car dealer people that buy cars for cash. So when you go to and it's not just for the cars, it's for the parts. It's for the computerized stuff within the cars. That's how they're able to change things out. But they go to these auctions, and these auctions are all over the place. And you can basically buy if a car was in an accident, or if a car is repossessed, or if a used car dealer, I mean, they can sell them for cash very easily,
right?
And the money's not traced. I mean, like when you're doing stuff with cash, you're not. I mean, there's no transactions to trace.
Well, but Hudson had speculated that this used, older car was being shipped because it didn't have GPS technology in it, and that it was more difficult to track it. That something illicit.
It doesn't even matter if it does. These guys are using. You can plug in. They have these devices that you basically can plug into these, like the computer systems, and just change the tracking. They change the VIN numbers.
Right.
So it's. I mean, and once you're in, I mean, they can do whatever they want. These guys aren't like stupid. Once you know how a computer system operates, I mean, you can basically do whatever you want with it. But when the guys at the port are working for you, and then it's the guys at the other end in these other countries that also have the dealerships or are picking the stuff up.
Right.
That's how they're getting away with it. But even when you watch videos that we see online, like ISIS drives Toyota trucks.
Right.
I mean, if you look up those stories, they're getting them from us. I mean, when we're supplying these rebels that we know aren't rebels,
moderate rebels.
Like, but it's just interesting to see all of the cases that are known, and like you have someone like the Awan brothers who do have these dealerships, and you have all these deaths happening at these dealerships.
Well, that's the other issue, of course.
It's crazy. It's like who knows what, but that also our agencies are involved in it, and that they're kind of keeping it on the hush-hush of like, even what to look for. You tell people, like, if you see something, say something. There's people in Florida that have been complaining about all of these different used car dealerships and like what goes on there. And this Bill Warner guy, who's an investigator, he lists actual documented cases of these known terror rings, and they're not just, I mean, there's Albania, there's all of these different places, and when you think about who, is working at these car dealerships, where the stuff is going, it's interesting that he actually tracks why they use certain ports, and, like, there's ports in Tampa that are used, but when they're not used, they go to Savannah, Georgia.
Right.
And they use a port there.
It's going on in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you've been following this story that George has been pounding on for the past several days about the murder of James Edward Gibson. Just today he got a photograph of a Metro PD crime van that was at the scene. And, of course, no van goes to the scene of a death unless it is a homicide.
Right. I mean, it's not only that. It's where these people are originating from. Like, how are they even getting into the country? I mean, we say these things. It's like, well, they're on a terror watch list. Well, what the fuck are we watching them do? Like, really?
Watching them sell a lot of cars.
Once you create these networks and the money, it really, to follow the money again.
It's an underground industry.
When it's cash, though, I mean, cash is king.
Right.
You can't trace cash like that. But
it's almost like the traditional system of Hawala, where there's money trading going on. I guess there's car trading going on. I wonder if that's involved at all. I presume it would be.
Well, I mean, you also have to think Washington, D.C. and Maryland. I mean, when you want to talk wealthy, you just look at these diplomats and you look at where these mansions are, and you see, like, I mean, there's a shit ton of money. When you want to look at wealthiest neighborhoods in the United States, I mean, you've got, all outside of Washington, D.C., but it's, who are connected to these people. When you're a diplomat, like, I don't know, I'm not that well versed in all this, but they come over with a lot of people. It's not just like one
they have a huge entourage. I've actually asked Joe to look specifically into Bentley thefts because it does seem that Alpha Giallo specializes and has favor for Bentleys.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't just. This is what's interesting about him. I was looking at that go back to 2010, and this is something that, like, even Schneiderman in New York, who I don't like, but and Cuomo, they're all aware of all of these rings, and they never shut the places down. In the Bronx, there's a shipping and logistics company in the Bronx that's been associated. It goes back to 2010. It's the airports. It's this and that. It's the West African community that's working at these places. there's an article that there's problems in the Bronx because these West Africans are basically bringing these shipping containers like in the middle of the Bronx and loading them with furniture and mattresses and cars.
Right.
And it happens. It's like every single year there's these car theft rings, and they put these like threats out, like if you don't think we're going to find you, and it's like, well, you're not, because you're not shutting anything down.
They obviously don't want to shut it down.
But the ports it seems that there's always the ports in New Jersey are not just like the ports, but that's where they also warehouse the stuff. If you've got a guy,
Joe was talking about that as well.
And this Alpha Jola character, I mean, I'm pretty good at finding information, and I've looked everywhere. He doesn't show up in the New Jersey sentencing with that ring. Yeah. He doesn't show up in the New York sentencing, but he does. You know, whether it's the same person, I don't know why he would always be that person. I don't know how they're connected to the A1s, but like when you go through, and I think George has done a good job of laying this out, you have different people in different roles.
Right.
So you've got you've got the main guys, the ringleaders, and you have the guys that actually take the cars. They don't know where they're going. I mean, they're just being paid. They're just being paid to like go steal a car, and then where it goes from there, they're just told where to park it, and then you have someone else take over. So when you say like these A1 brothers are just like 6 people, well, no. I mean, you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of people.
Yeah, and of course, Alpha Jalo is getting into gunfights with the Capitol Police, actually, and yet he seems to always evade incarceration. I think there's something very special about it.
If it's the same Alpha Jalo, because I've got to tell you, like, I don't know. I mean, I know everyone can have, like, there's names that everyone,
Alpha Jalo is a pretty unique, and there could be more than one. But
there's also, like, another Alpha Jalo in
but Newark, George has postulated that is done on purpose to shard the personality and make it more difficult to, track him. And
well, it is difficult, but what's interesting is these people running these rings, like, one of the main guys that was running the New York ring wasn't even a citizen.
Yeah.
He came over, like,
well, that's not
they're not citizens, and they're, like, able to start these, like, businesses and get with this stuff. It's just very strange to me that even with the Elon brothers, I mean, and knowing all of the car stuff, like, why is this stuff being... This is really, since you guys started talking about it, I never thought in a million years that, like, think about car theft.
Right. Well, that's just it. It's so mundane that most people are just like, oh, well, cars get stolen. But what we're really realizing is that this is an illicit industry that's funding terrorism.
It's like trafficking. It is funding terrorism, but this Bill Warner guy says that one car every 25 minutes in the United States is stolen for these purposes.
Well, and think about that. It's almost a tax on everyone's auto insurance because the rate of theft is so high, insurance companies need to absorb that cost.
He also talked about that.
Yeah.
He talked about how even in the insurance...
Well, I think we need to get with this guy, Bill Warner, and figure out what he's doing. But listen, let's do this for right now. Let me get this up on the site, and I want to get Joe involved in the conversation, and we're going to keep following this, okay?
I would just really tell the crowd to start looking into all of the different cases and see just how prevalent it is.
Yeah.
Like, Google this Bill Warner guy's name. I gave you guys some links to articles,
put them all up. Yeah,
a ton of stuff.
I'll put them together
and
with this video.
And they have declassified FBI reports of this stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's really important if your crowd can start looking into it, because there's just way too many for you guys to start reading about, and they can just start looking into it and just seeing how everything is connected. It's pretty interesting.
It is indeed. All right, Brainy Blonde, thanks again for another great call.
A good one.
Talk to you soon, okay?
Ciao.
Bye-bye.